Sometimes the hardest part about building a new life in America isn't the language, the paperwork, or even the distance from home. It's the uncertainty. One new rule can change everything you've worked for. One misunderstanding can place years of effort at risk. If you're an immigrant living in the US or dreaming of coming here, you deserve clarity, not confusion. You deserve to know exactly what's changing, what's at stake, and what you can do to protect your future. Today, we're going to talk about a historic immigration reform law recently passed by Congress, one that experts are calling the most significant change to immigration policy in decades. It's being described as comprehensive, far-reaching, and in some cases, controversial. And for millions of immigrants, whether you hold a green card, a work visa, or you're planning to apply for citizenship, this new law could directly affect your life. Let's go step by step, in clear and simple terms, through what this law really means. For the first time, the federal government has unified all non-citizens under one broad category of enforcement. That means temporary visa holders, lawful permanent residents, and even long-term green card holders are now grouped together when it comes to how immigration violations or offenses are handled. In other words, the old idea that once you have a green card, you're safe is no longer guaranteed. Previously, lawful permanent residents could generally live with confidence that, unless they committed a serious crime, their status was stable. But this new reform changes that assumption. It expands the list of situations that can trigger deportation or denial of immigration benefits. One of the most talked about parts of this reform is how it treats driving under the influence, commonly known as a DUI. Under the new federal standard, even a single DUI case, including one that your state might consider a misdemeanor, could now make you deportable. It could also make you inadmissible, meaning if you travel abroad, you might not be allowed to return to the US. Let's make that clear with an example. Imagine you're a green card holder who has lived in the US for 12 years. You've built a family here, paid your taxes, and followed the law. One night, you make a mistake. You drive after drinking, get stopped, and face a DUI charge. You serve your sentence and move on. Under the old rules, that single incident might not affect your immigration status. But under the new law, that same incident could now lead to removal proceedings or block your path to US. Citizenship. This reform also gives immigration authorities broader power to act even before a formal conviction. That means if you admit to conduct that meets the legal definition of a DUI, even without being found guilty in court, that admission could still trigger immigration action. Supporters of this law say it's about accountability and safety. They point to statistics showing thousands of deaths each year from alcohol-related driving accidents, arguing that lawful immigrants should be held to the same, if not higher, standards of responsibility. Lawmakers describe it as firm but fair, a measure designed to protect the public and strengthen trust in the immigration system. But immigrant advocates and many legal experts worry that these changes go too far. They fear that treating minor mistakes the same way as serious crimes could destroy families and create fear within immigrant communities. Advocacy groups are urging the government to apply these new standards with compassion and discretion, warning that a single lapse in judgment should not erase years of good conduct or hard work. Two major sections or pillars define this reform. The first is the expanded grounds of inadmissibility. Anyone who has been convicted of or admits to a DUI may now be considered inadmissible to the United States. This affects people applying for visas, renewals, adjustments of status, and even citizenship. Immigration attorneys stress that this rule applies even if no jail time was served, because the new law classifies DUI conduct as a serious moral and legal violation. The second pillar involves tighter deportation standards. Regardless of how individual states classify DUIs, whether they call it a misdemeanor or not, federal law now takes precedence. In other words, the federal immigration system can decide that a DUI is grounds for deportation, even if the state treats it as a lesser offense. This is a big shift for immigrants who once believed that a green card meant long-term security. Under the new framework, a green card is no longer seen as permanent protection. It's viewed as a conditional privilege. And that privilege can be taken away if certain public safety standards are violated. The law also changes how immigration officers evaluate good moral character, which is a key requirement for U.S. citizenship. Now, if you have a single DUI on your record, you automatically fail that standard and become ineligible for naturalization. This makes official what some immigration officers were already applying in certain regions, but now it's the national rule. So what can this mean in real life? Attorneys are already reporting cases of long-term residents reevaluating whether to apply for citizenship or even renew their status if they have any prior DUI history. Some are seeking legal advice immediately because the law allows for retroactive review, meaning past cases, even from years ago, can now be re-examined under these new standards. The Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will soon publish more details on how the law will be implemented. That guidance will help clarify how strictly these new deportation triggers will be applied. But for now, there's uncertainty. Many immigrants are asking whether their past mistakes will affect their future applications. And immigration lawyers across the country are urging people not to take any chances. The reform isn't entirely punitive. There are also modernization measures designed to improve efficiency within immigration agencies. For instance, more funding has been set aside to upgrade digital systems, expand online filing, and speed up visa processing, especially for employment-based and family-sponsored categories. Those are positive changes aimed at reducing the frustrating delays that so many applicants have experienced. Still, many advocates believe that the enforcement sections of the law overshadow these improvements. They worry that the new deportation and inadmissibility rules will cause fear, discourage people from reporting incidents, and lead to harsher outcomes for families who have otherwise followed every rule. Consulates abroad and the National Visa Center are also preparing to enforce these changes. That means stricter background checks, longer interviews, and more document verification for visa applicants. Immigration analysts predict that these procedures might slow visa approvals, especially for applicants who must attend in-person interviews. For immigrants already living in the U.S., this reform is prompting major lifestyle adjustments. Some green card holders are postponing international travel, worried that leaving the country could trigger new scrutiny at re-entry. Others are reviewing their driving records or consulting attorneys before filing any paperwork. International students and workers on temporary visas are being advised to maintain perfect legal compliance to avoid complications. Beyond the legal impact, there's a deep emotional one. Community organizations report a growing sense of anxiety. Families are asking questions like, will this affect my spouse's green card renewal? Or what if something happened years ago? There's confusion, concern, and a strong desire for honest information. Experts say that over the next several months, the way immigration agencies interpret and enforce this new law will determine its true reach. Much depends on how broadly they apply the admission of conduct rule and how much discretion officers have when evaluating individual cases. At its heart, this reform represents a major shift towards stricter compliance and uniform enforcement. It sets higher expectations for all non-citizens and makes clear that only full U.S. citizenship now provides lasting security. For everyone else, students, professionals, long-term residents, the margin for error is narrower than ever. This is not a time for panic, but it is a time for preparation. The United States remains a land of opportunity, but it's also a land of laws. Understanding those laws and adapting to them is part of building a stable future here. If you found this explanation helpful, please subscribe to Legal Focus USA for more updates on U.S. immigration law, policy changes, and practical guidance for your journey in America. We're here to help you stay informed, stay protected, and stay hopeful. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves and your families.